When we talk about spy movies, we usually jump straight to James Bond, Jason Bourne, George Smiley. But today, we're cracking the code of two spies who never spoke a word, never revealed a backstory, and somehow told us everything about espionage. Hi, this is Dan.
And Tom.
And today, we're decoding spy versus spy. Yes, that spy versus spy. The black spy, the white spy. Endless traps, explosions, elaborate schemes, mutual destruction. On the surface, it looks like a gag comic from Mad Magazine. But underneath is one of the sharpest spy commentaries ever created.
In fact, Spy vs. Spy might secretly be the most honest spy story of all time.
Yeah.
This is how this Mad Magazine comic shaped spy cinema.
Yeah. Now, a friend of mine gave me the Spy versus Spy omnibus book for my birthday. So, a shout out to Admiral Boom, as he likes to be called. Now, he's the guy who suggested we do Eye of the Needle and Five Graves to Cairo, too. And I was thinking then, wow, this would be a fun podcast. This predates all of the James Bond movies when it was debuted. So, we will extract all we can from this comic strip series, which appeared in 241 Mad Magazine issues from 1961 to 1987. This is a different kind of thing for us. But as Alfred E. Newman, the mascot of Mad Magazine, used to say, quid me anxious, son? What, me worry? So today, Spy versus Spy, how a Mad Magazine comic shaped spy cinema is what we're talking about.
So, Dan, when you told me we were going to decode Spy vs. Spy, I got this huge smile on my face.
Okay, good.
This series came out the year before I was born, and I was probably 9 or 10 when I found out about it.
Okay.
So I'd go get the Mad Magazine, and then I found out about the paperbacks, and the first one was released in 1968, so I was 6. But then in 73, they released 2 paperbacks, and that's where I got hooked. I was 11, and this is where this thing really took off for me. I mean, they were just reprints from Mad Magazine, but since I was so young, I hadn't seen the earlier ones.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Now, they stopped releasing the books in the late 70s, but for me, this is a great memory. And quite honestly, I'd forgotten about it until you mentioned the Spy vs. Spy omnibus book. I mean, there are also some video shorts of some of these that played on Mad TV and on Cartoon Network series called Mad. And I'm hooked again. You know, I hadn't looked at Spy versus Spy in forever, but this is like we get to revisit some long lost friends, and I'm glad we can jump into the black spy versus the white spy.
Yeah,
now
it's gonna be fun.
I've said in other episodes that I didn't see James Bond in the theater till The Spy Who Loved Me, so these guys, the black spy and white spy, they were my entry into spies.
Yeah, and this Spy versus Spy omnibus book has the comic strips, including the splash titles, and which is very cool. So, where did Spy versus Spy come from? Well, Spy versus Spy debuted in Mad Magazine in 1961. Mad Magazine was a that was a great name for that magazine. It was a nutty magazine. So, it debuted in 1961, which is not a coincidence. That's the same year the Berlin Wall went up, 1 year before the movie Dr. No, but 8 years after Ian Fleming introduced us to James Bond in his first novel, Casino Royale. So,
right at the beginning of the explosion of spy movies.
Yeah, this was right in the dead center of the Cold War and the fear this brought to people all over the world. So here, the comic Spy vs. Spy satirizes espionage paranoia. Eventually, we'll see, it influences Bond's balance of global stakes with dark humor, or at least humor that walks a fine line. And again, it was influenced by Spy versus Spy. Laughs coexist with lethal intent. We get a little of that in Bond movies, right? And it's a tonal tightrope that Bond movies walk better than any other spy franchise. Spy versus Spy's creator, Antonio Prohías, he was a Cuban cartoonist who fled Castro's Cuba. This matters because Castro accused him of working for the CIA or of being a spy.
Well, and part of that was because Prohías had written some cartoons that were chastising Castro and his government. So
yeah,
he kind of went into exile to get out of it.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly freedom of the press there at the time. So Spy versus Spy isn't written by someone watching espionage from the outside. It's written by someone who lived under it. The black spy and the white spy aren't heroes. They aren't villains either. They're ideologies in human form. So no names, no nations, just endless conflict.
Yeah, so already Spy versus Spy is doing something most spy movies won't admit for decades.
Exactly. Yeah. And for Prohías, who had fled from Cuba to New York with his family following shortly thereafter, the book I mentioned, Spy versus Spy Omnibus, he quoted him as saying to a Miami Herald reporter in 1983, quote, "The sweetest revenge has been to turn Fidel's accusations of me as a spy into a money-making venture," unquote. It's like, okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's just perfect.
It really is. Now, we've talked about this book a few times. We've got no affiliation with this book, all right? It's just we love the Spy versus Spy stories. Now, if you're not familiar with these comics, and really it was just a comic strip, the basic premise is that there's a spy who's dressed in black, they call the Black Spy, and another one dressed in white who is aptly named the White Spy. Go figure. Now, and in these comics, they would try to one-up each other, and at the end of the comic, they would often blow up or some other way maim the other spy. Yet, like James Bond's going to have to do after No Time to Die, they keep coming back.
Yeah.
Now, here's the genius and probably the boldest choice for this comic series. There was no dialogue.
Yes.
There were no captions. There were no word bubbles.
Hard to do.
It really is.
And why do you think that is?
Because spying is about action, not explanation. And a skilled comic writer doesn't need the words because they can show you the action and not have to explain it. And as they say, a picture sometimes speaks way louder than words.
Yeah, and it certainly does for Prohías. So Prohías told whole stories in like 4 to 6 panels of a comic strip.
Yeah, they're really short.
And in real espionage, you don't monologue. You don't explain the plan. You act or you die. And the spy
that's often one of the villains' downfalls is because they end up having to explain the plan instead of just shooting them.
How many Bond movies do that? Yeah. All right, you act or you die. And the black spy versus the white spy are in constant action. Each multi-panel story is 100% action. Yeah, they're thinking sometimes, and we see their thoughts in thought bubbles, but not word bubbles. We see them questioning in action with like a question mark bubble. Again, no words there. And I love that below the Spy versus Spy title for each strip are the Morse code symbols translating to by Prohías. That was very cool then. Yeah. I think it's still cool.
It really is. It really, I mean, that just kind of shows you how clever this guy was.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, you say there were no words. Eventually, there was kind of like, every so often, there'd be like a bam or a wow or something.
Like a Batman bam or something. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But not dialogue.
They're not, right. Exactly. Spy versus Spy strips espionage down to its purest cinematic language, visual storytelling, cause and effect, as he sees stuff happening, and set up and payoff. These are, simple concepts, but brilliantly done in this strip. This is really like silent movie logic applied to spycraft on the page. It's over and over again. This happens. It's like Buster Keaton, meets the CIA tradecraft in a comic strip form, and the comic strip was all in black and white, no color. Another hint that the black spy versus the white spy were just that, opposites, clearly opposites.
Yeah, you were either one or the other, and color would have made that murkier. And they did do some color later, and I actually think the black and white. Yeah. I think the black and white was much better.
After Prohías died, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Now, there was no dialogue, as we said, but we still get maximum visual storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
The comic's wordless storytelling definitely prefigures the modern spy movies that came after the introduction of Spy versus Spy, like Bond's and other spy movies' reliance on visual spectacle and action-driven scenes and characters. Now, again, doing this all in 4 to 6 comic strip panels. I mean, it was really quite amazing
It is
how much
amazing.
story they could tell in that little time with no words.
Yeah, and here's the key insight too. You see a lot of clever dialogue, obviously, in the James Bond movies. All the spy movies now, you see clever
Yeah,
dialogue.
these guys were
But
not cunning linguists.
no, exactly. If you remove the talking, spies stop sounding so noble. They start looking a little more ridiculous, or at least questionable. So, yeah, ridiculous, vulnerable, fragmented, whatever, without the words, they look a little bit more like that. This is not an accident. This was an in our faces smack of two sides, both thinking that they're right and going at it constantly. Look at all the spy movies, they attempt to do the same thing. But often they choose a side which is the good guy and a side which is the bad guy for us. So that's all done. Here, you don't
Yeah.
have that.
Well, that's right. We don't know who the good side or the bad spy is in Spy versus Spy, right? Because there really is no good side versus bad spy. It's just spy versus spy, not country versus country, organization versus organization. It's spy versus spy.
Yeah, and I like in the titles where sometimes he had the word spy versus spy. Sometimes the first spy was white, the word, and the second word was black, and other times he reversed it. So again, that was telling us once again, there is no good side or bad side. I'm mixing these all up for you because this is the way it is.
Yeah, you look in the
All right.
mirror and you see a spy.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of cool things that are done in this script that certainly translate into the spy movies that we all know. I mean, there are moral mirrors here, the black versus the white. I mean, that concept is exactly that, a moral mirror. So let's talk about the elephant in the room here. And you mentioned this, Tom. Black spy, white spy. It looks like good versus evil, white spy, black spy, all that. That's what all the movies tell us. And as we said, but it isn't. They are perfect mirrors.
Yeah, now we just recently did an entire episode, Mirror Mirror, the villains who reflect James Bond. Well,
Yeah, I
here
love that. Yeah.
Well, here we just got two spies that are mirrors of each other, and it doesn't matter which one is in charge that episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And so here in Black Spy versus White Spy, this creates this visual silhouette. And these simple, instantly readable and understandable designs, readable because they're not words, but pictures again, that influence the visual shorthand of spy movies to come. Tuxedos, hats, stark contrasts, all that kind of stuff. For example, in James Bond movies, look at Goldfinger, wealth and power as Bond's mirror. In Scaramanga, a literal mirror assassin. Silva, Bond abandoned by the system. And Bond and 006, of course, from GoldenEye. Spy versus Spy reveals why Bond villains are reflections, not opposites. And Spy versus Spy literalizes the same but opposite dynamic here that certainly defines Bond and his villains. The villains are Bond without the rules. And we talk about that in that episode you mentioned. So check that one out too. But, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Now, I think this works in the comic series because neither spy is good.
Yeah.
Both of them cheat and sabotage. And it kind of anticipates later Bond movies where moral clarity gets blurred, right? Because you don't look at the comic going, oh, it's the black spy, that's the side of good, or this is the white spy, I know where this is going. This is just the fact you've got two spies interacting.
Yeah. You really never know where it's going. And that's the brilliance of his work. The violence in Spy versus Spy, it's really clean. It's graphic. It's almost elegant, really, the way he does it. And actually, it's refined brutality. I mean, it's a weird combination of words, but it's kind of what that is, which is echoed in Bond's choreographed kills and in the visually iconic deaths that we see in the Bond movies. So,
Well, a good example of that from the Bond series is in A View to a Kill. So
okay.
when Bond kicks Locke's car over the cliff,
Yes.
that would have been a very fitting thing to see in a Spy versus Spy death
Yeah.
panel. Right?
Yeah.
But in the comic, what would have happened, somehow Locke would have masterminded things to get the better of Bond, and Bond would have been the one that died.
Yeah,
And so
right.
it was taking these things and then putting this kind of bizarre twist on them.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah,
in
yeah.
4 to 6 panels.
Yeah, yeah. He would have had some secret cord attached to the other spy. Whatever. They both go over. We have something similar with these mirrors in spy movies like The Icarus File, 1965. You look at the spy versus spy parallel, well, they're bureaucratic mirrors, again, instead of flashy heroes. Spies that are trapped by systems identical on both sides, didn't matter what side you were on, no clear moral high ground, and winning looks identical to losing. It's the same mirror conflict minus the Bollinger and the Tux. Yeah. You're
All
not going to
right.
get that here.
So let's take a look at another spy movie that doesn't have as all the action.
Mm-hmm.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Oh,
But
yeah.
here, the enemy's already inside the mirror. So you've got Smiley versus Carla. They're two minds shaped in a very similar way. There's a Cold War stasis because nobody wins.
Yeah.
And
Huh?
identity becomes the battlefield here. It's kind of like Spy versus Spy, but stripped of the jokes. Instead, it's played as existential horror.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I like that. And how about the Bourne series? Again, you look at spy versus spy parallel there, self again versus the institutional self. Bourne is hunted by operatives trained exactly like him.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Look at the in the Born Identity. Look at the
yeah,
role of the professor. The same training, the same skill set, and the same single-mindedness to their mission.
yeah. The system creates identical killers. Right? That's crazy. And in Bourne's case, memory loss doesn't erase conditioning. Bourne is spy versus spy turned inward.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And okay, of course we got to mention Mission Impossible, right?
yeah.
Because this parallel here to Spy versus Spy is in Mission Impossible, we've got a team-based mirror or constant escalation. It's IMF versus the Syndicate. Identical skills, tech, and tactics.
Yeah, Sean Ambrose was a trained turncoat. He knows what Ethan will do, and he mirrors Hunt. So all of this, I'm telling you, the Spy versus Spy had a big impact on the
Yeah.
spy movies to come.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I mean, again, in Mission Impossible here, we've got villains succeeded by copying the heroes. Now, in Spy
yeah,
versus Spy, there's no real hero. It's just
right.
spy versus a spy. It expanded into a collaborative, broader chaos than what we sometimes get in some of these other movies.
Yeah. All right, let's look at a comedy spy movie too. So let's look at Austin Powers because parallels there too,
Yep.
right? All right. So Spy versus Spy has satire and a warning. Austin Powers was a parody of the Bond mirror. The villain literally mirrors Bond's excess, and jokes land and hit the mark because the structure is real. So the comedy works because spy versus spy logic already exists. The comedy has been done before Austin Powers, and Spy versus Spy contributed.
Yeah. Now, the other thing here is in Spy versus Spy, the villains don't need a sophisticated backstory. It's
Right.
rather
Yeah.
all conflict. It's kind of like the classic Bond and other spy movie villains. The spies don't need origin stories. The conflict itself is the story.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key. The conflict is the story. These are just a couple of examples. The clear thing is that Spy versus Spy was ahead of its time. The black spy versus the white spy. Same intelligence, same paranoia, same cruelty, same willingness to destroy the other and themselves. Every trap the black spy sets, the white spy sets a better one. Every victory, immediately reversed. So this is so brilliant. This guy was doing in the 60s.
Well, yeah,
Unbelievable.
and you know, as you're saying here, there was neither inherently good nor bad. Right?
Right.
You say every trap the black spy sets. Well, in the next comic strip, it's going to be the white spy that did it. In fact, Prohías alternated, and they actually kept track which spy got the upper hand in the previous comic, and they alternated which spy was the good guy,
He
if
was
you will,
very good. Very good.
in the next strip, right? So that really reinforces the mirror because it wasn't always the white spy wins or the black spy wins. They went back and forth.
Yeah.
And it shows us how everything is the same with these spies.
Yeah, and winning wasn't really winning. It was something neutral, really, because they never really won. And this is really Cold War logic in cartoon or comic strip form, really. If one side escalates, the other must escalate further. Spy versus Spy understands something that Bond movies often dance around. Espionage isn't really about winning, it's about preventing the other side from winning, which means nobody ever really wins.
Well, and Prohías drew his cartoons based on what was happening in the world, trying to stay current. We see that in
Yes.
the Bond series as well.
Now, there were times that Prohías introduced a third spy, a woman, and she is always gray. And she often wins, though. And in these cases, the strip is called Spy versus Spy versus Spy, with each spy word either black, gray, or white. This is an interesting commentary because, as we hypothesize, the world is gray, not black and white. So gray wins out here. I thought that was extremely clever.
Yeah, now you say Gray wins out here, though. They had to stop doing the gray part in the series because it became too predictable.
Yes, well,
Unlike,
it was. It was.
yeah, unlike where the black spy would win in one episode or one strip and the white spy
Yeah,
would
yeah.
win in the next one, the woman spy always got the better of both of them.
Yes.
There was
Yeah,
not a
right.
point where they got her. She always got them. So it became too predictable, too gray. So they eventually moved on from that. But it worked for a short time.
All right, let's look at something that is big in this comic strip in almost every strip that he put out. Traps, gadgets, and,
Wait,
of course, a Bond parody.
there's gadgets in this?
Yeah, come on, let's talk gadgets. All right, exploding cigars, trap doors, booby trap briefcases, rigged telephones, fake safes. Sound familiar? Spy versus Spy is absolutely riffing on James Bond gadgets.
But it's doing something smarter here, though.
Yeah,
In Bond movies, the gadgets usually work, or at least Bond's, because Q is very good.
yeah, Q's good.
They save Bond often because Q knows what Bond will need for each mission, somehow amazingly giving him exactly the right gadget.
Yeah, Q always knows
Q,
best.
yeah, he absolutely does. But in Spy versus Spy, the gadgets almost always backfire.
Yeah, now that reminds me of Wile E. Coyote. Remember the Warner Brothers cartoon using gadgets?
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar to some
The
of that.
Acme Anvil. And,
But in that one, it was Wiley versus the Roadrunner, where the Roadrunner was, if you will, the good guy. Here they alternate.
right.
And the interesting thing in these comic strips is that the smartest plan tends to lead to the dumbest ending. And they also rarely reused a gadget throughout this whole thing. I mean, there were some similarities, but exact reuse wasn't something that Prohías did. And some of these things were just absolutely ridiculous, way overthought, and under-engineered.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When I was going through the book, there was this one strip in it that, a lot of the strips made it into these shorts, but one in particular, there's a plot where the sun is reflected off of a mirror, which is being used
Oh, yeah.
to try to kill this guy, right, through the heat of that.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of 3 spy movies that used mirrors in a similar fashion. You have Matt Helm's Murderer's Row, you've got James Bond, the Man with the Golden Gun, and the comedy Spies Like Us. In fact,
Yeah.
what happens with that, they're doing it from the satellite in the Spies Like Us, is almost exactly a mirror of what they did in this strip in
Yeah.
Spy versus Spy.
Yeah, that panel actually reminded me of the Greek mathematician Archimedes of Syracuse town.
Of course it did. Yeah, I remember Archimedes.
he lived
He and
in,
I hung out.
214 BC or whatever he lived. So, I've been actually, it was in Syracuse on Sicily, and I've been there. And I've been to
Syracuse.
theoretically where he's buried. But he, at least in theory, used the system of polished bronze or copper shields and to act as a burning mirror to use the sun's ray as a death ray to focus the sunlight onto Roman ships and theoretically set them on fire when they were besieging Syracuse. So there's not much historical fact for that, though, but it's the same kind of thing in this panel. And I'm sure Prohías was thinking about that.
Yeah, he and Archimedes, yeah,
Do
same
things-
wavelength, or at least sun wavelength.
Yeah. Now, weapons and traps define character in Spy versus Spy, just like Bond gadgets reveal ingenuity, arrogance, and sometimes restraint. They serve in a lot of ways as a personality all of their own. So technology becomes the problem, and it's a warning disguised as a joke. The more clever the spy, the more spectacular the failure, certainly in the Spy versus Spy strip.
Well, yeah, it's not just comedy, it's commentary.
Definitely,
And
yes.
that's the brilliance of Prohías' Spy versus Spy here. And it's also why he fled from Castro's Cuba.
Exactly. Now, you look at what Prohías has done here, and the spies are actually prisoners of the game. He does this in 4 to 6 panels every time. Is amazing. So here's where Spy versus Spy gets a little dark. Neither spy can stop. They can't stop. Neither spy can walk away. Neither spy can win permanently. They are trapped by the system. They don't fight because they hate each other. They fight because they exist. Spy versus spy. Black spy versus white spy.
It's who they are.
Yeah, let's talk mirrors again. This mirrors real-world intelligence agencies. Missions continue even when their objective is unclear. Enemies change names, not behavior. And operations outlive sometimes their purpose. So Spy versus Spy suggests, really, that espionage isn't a job. It's a loop, an endless loop, which,
Well,
again,
for a comic strip, that's a pretty, I guess, brutally honest take.
that's heavy duty. It's amazing, actually.
So, Dan, unlike us, though, Spy versus Spy hasn't aged because the Cold War never really ended. It warmed a bit. There's a slight thaw. The countries involved might have changed a little bit, but it never truly ended.
Yeah.
Because it changed. We get cyber warfare instead of the tricked up from Russia with love briefcases and suits.
Yeah.
Information's more important than bombs. Data and intelligence and information, that's what we're getting now.
Yeah.
Influence is more important than invasions.
Yeah, there you go. So you're saying that the gadgets and how things are done are different now than they were when Spy versus Spy was released, but the end goal is what we're saying is still the same.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. Now, modern spy movies like Skyfall, No Time to Die, even Mission Impossible, they're all about burnout, obsolescence, especially in Skyfall.
I think they were mirroring Barbara Broccoli, Michael G. Wilson, and Purvis and Wade's burning out in the series. I think they were burned out, and that's why we started getting more of this
obsolescence
theme.
stuff. Yeah. Okay. But in Spy versus Spy here, we get endless escalation. We said that. Each Spy versus Spy strip resets but raises the cruelty or cleverness. And that's mirrored in Bond movies, constantly trying to outdo previous villains' schemes. You know, look at Moonraker. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. Spy versus Spy predicted this 60 plus years ago. 2 spies, same tactics, new weapons, same outcome. That's pretty wild.
That's really where we are today with our spy movies. Prohías was onto something early on.
Yeah. Now, Spy versus Spy, if you look at it in its totality, it's really the ultimate anti-Bond story. James Bond survives. Well, at least he did until No Time to Die. But Amazon will resurrect him one way or another. Spy versus Spy endures. Like you were saying, it's still relevant today. It's like water rolling off an oiled ball. It must move aside, and the ball endures.
Wow.
This is how Spy versus Spy is. That's my image I get of Spy versus Spy. It's like, you can't make this stop.
And,
you can't.
And that's an image you could show in a comic strip.
Yeah, with no words. All right. Now, Bond is fantasy. Look at the style of Bond. He's elegant, worldly. He's refined in his taste for food, wine, champagnes, cocktails, and so on. He's in control when he's on a mission. It's Bond, James Bond, who's in control or who regains control. Now, victory. Bond usually wins. Yeah, Blofeld gets away many times, but Bond's missions succeed in general. You look at Spy versus Spy, that's not fantasy, it's reality. It's chaos, reflecting the chaos really in the world. It's paranoia. Well, every country today is paranoid about every other country, and so the spy game in a new form must continue. And Spy versus Spy was all over this early. And mutual destruction. Well, we all know how we avoided a nuclear war so far. MAD, mutually assured destruction. Although these elements are changing these days. But wow, Prohías was on this a long time ago.
So is Mad Magazine mutually assured destruction?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the gadgets were far from reality. They're more Rube Goldberg-esque, I guess, if I can use that word, where
No,
in
that's good. I
modern
like that.
movies, they're sometimes more fantastical, but maybe possible. In Spy versus Spy, they were just comical. They were destructive, but they were comical.
If you look at James Bond, he is the myth the governments are telling us about spying. And Spy versus Spy is not that. It's the truth about spying. Kind of James Bond is in our face saying about this myth and fantasy. Spy versus Spy is really kind of whispering behind closed doors kind of thing that, hey, no, this is like truth. This is how it really is. And as a comic strip writer, Prohías was in touch with the world, and he felt its pulse thumping, and he drew about it. No medals, no martinis, just traps and the resulting consequences, like real world consequences. So brilliant. Again, brilliant.
Yeah. Now, when I look at that, I ask the question, what's the real message of Spy versus Spy? Yes, it's a comic strip, but there's a
Yeah.
message there.
Yes, there is.
It's not that spies are stupid, and it's not that intelligence work is pointless.
No, no. Here's what I think it is, Tom. When everyone believes they're the hero, conflict becomes endless. And we have said this in many episodes. Every spy working for a country believes that they are on the side of the good, that if they're successful, they will be a hero for their country or to their country. In Spy versus Spy, it is the most honest spy story ever told, I think, because it admits that espionage isn't about good and evil. It's about identical people. It's mirror versus mirror. Same skills, same paranoia, same cruelty, trapped in endless reflection. And the spy movies borrow a lot from this concept. I mean, you look at every spy movie since, it's the same thing. Spy versus Spy's parody becomes a blueprint. Spy versus Spy didn't just mock spy movies. It clarified the mechanics of spy movies, which Bond and other spy movies to come leaned heavily into and knowingly leaned heavily into and willingly into because they knew the impact that this strip has and borrowed from it. Spy versus Spy doesn't pick a side. Doesn't need to.
And once we see both spies as identical, we've already cracked the code.
Yeah, there you go.
So, Dan, I want to thank you for reminding me of one of my joys from 50 years ago. Right?
Yeah.
And something
Okay, you're welcome.
that I'd really forgotten about. And if our listeners haven't seen the comic strips, you can check out the book Spy versus Spy Omnibus, available on Amazon. You can also look on YouTube and watch these short clips. It's a fascinating, fun little way in very short segments of getting some spy stories told to you.
Yeah. All right. I think that was fun. This has been a fun episode, and that is a wrap of our decoding of Spy versus Spy, two spies who changed the way we look at spies. All right, this has been Dan.
And Tom.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe to Cracking the Code of Spy Movies, where we decode the spy stories hiding in plain sight. From classics to Bond and beyond, and to cartoons that understand espionage better than most blockbusters. All right, until next time, watch the shadows, question the mission, see the truth. Thanks for listening.